Since the release of Train Sim World 6, I've had numerous people asking if I was going to review the Morristown Line, and here's your answer. American routes tend to be a rarity in TSW these days, and some of the routes that we have got leave a lot to be desired where overall quality is concerned, so I was curious to see how the Morristown Line turned out.
Attention Convent Station customers, the 11:15 a.m. eastbound Train 2, Penn Station, New York, is expected to arrive on track 2 in approximately 3 minutes. The next station stop is Summit. When leaving the train, please watch the gap.
The Morristown Line was released at the end of September 2025 as one of the core routes in TSW6. I didn't get this one at first, and eventually acquired it on a 35% discount during Dovetail's Festival of Rail in February 2026. The route's normal price as a standalone add-on is $57 New Zealand dollars, but I paid $37.04 for my copy. As for route coverage, you get a total of around 40 miles of track from New York's Penn Station out to Dover, New Jersey, along with the branch to Hoboken Terminal on the western bank of the Hudson River. The Morristown Line is electrified, but only as far as Dover. Why Dovetail decided to cut the route coverage at Dover, instead of going the whole hog and adding the non-electrified section to Hackettstown, is anyone's guess. Another disappointing aspect of their route coverage choice is the omission of the branch line from Summit to Gladstone, not to mention the Montclair-Boonton line, which branches off the Morristown Line at Newark Broad Street and rejoins at Denville, going via Montclair State University. The base route includes the New Jersey Transit ALP 46 electric locomotive, Multilevel coaches, and Arrow 3 electric multiple unit. The ALP 46 and multi-levels were recycled from the NEC New York to Trenton add-on, albeit with upgrades to bring them up to TSW6 standards, while the Arrow 3 is a new addition to TSW. In a case of history repeating itself, referring to an add-on from TS Classic, Dovetail did not include the single-car variant of the Arrow 3 for TSW. They only did the two-car sets, known as married pairs. Meanwhile, there's another NJT locomotive in TSW, namely the ALP 45DP electro-diesel, but this thing is sold separately, and her full price is 25 New Zealand dollars, but I paid $17.49 for my copy. Curiously, the ALP 45DP's default prime mover sounds are recycled from the Metrolink F125, which is available in the Antelope Valley and San Bernardino route add-ons. To be fair, both of these locomotives use engines made by Caterpillar in real life, but they do not use the exact same type of engine. From what I gather, the ALP 45DPs have to run in diesel mode between Newark Broad Street and Hoboken, though I can't remember the reason why. In any case, and to be honest, the more cynical side of me thinks that it's awfully convenient that this just so happens to be the case, if it's true, and for all I know, it could have been Dovetail's attempted justification for not including the Dover to Hackettstown section. I like the suspension physics on the Arrow 3, particularly when she's clattering over points. I also prefer driving this train over the locomotive hauled stock, since she has more conventional brakes as opposed to these strange manually lapped brakes on the locomotives and multi-level cab car. One strange aspect of driving the Arrow 3 is her lack of a conventional reverser lever. When it comes to modelling and audio, I think this is a pretty solid train, and I particularly like the wood panelling for the interior. You don't really see this sort of thing on newer trains these days. Meanwhile, the ALP 45DP's acceleration rate varies depending on whether she's in diesel or electric mode. Even when she's only hauling 6 multi-level coaches, She seems pretty slow off the mark in diesel mode, despite still being fairly powerful in this mode with 3,600 horsepower at the rail. When she's in electric mode, her acceleration is noticeably faster, with a higher power output of 5,900 horsepower at the rail, but I still reckon the Arrow 3 accelerates faster than this locomotive. One thing I quite like about the ALP-45DP is her screaming horn, as demonstrated during my stop at Brick Church. Timetable mode includes 93 playable services for the Arrow 3, 169 services for the ALP-45DP, 98 services for the ALP-46, and 168 services with the multi-level cab car leading. Throughout the timetable, there are 22 Gladstone bound, 54 Dover bound, 50 Hoboken bound, and 73 New York Penn bound passenger services that the player can run, and it can take around 90 minutes to complete a full run from Dover to Hoboken or Penn Station, although the journey time for each service varies depending on the stopping pattern. The Arrow 3 only has 7 passenger services that cover the full Dover to Hoboken run, 3 inbound and 4 outbound. Most of the time, she primarily runs the Gladstone service, which is only drivable as far as Summit. The rail scene is somewhat boring beyond Summit, since most of the time you'll only be seeing multi-levels hauled by either an ALP-46 or ALP-45DP, and there are no freight services on this route. It could do with, at the very least, the addition of single-decker Comet 4 or Comet 5 coaches and cab cars to make the rail scene more interesting. On the topic of New Jersey transit, I would like to see the Atlantic City line in TSW at some point, complete with the GP40PH-2B diesel locomotive. I recommend watching Pensifan 19's video on the ACL if you haven't heard of the route before. Something I've forgotten to mention this whole time is the fact that, if you've got the Amtrak Acela and NEC New York to Trenton add-ons, you'll see Amtrak services in the Morristown Line timetable, and the Amtrak stock is playable for empty services between Penn Station and Sunnyside Yard. If you've got the LIRR M3 and LIRR commuter add-ons, of 2020 and 2024 respectively, then you will see AI-only Long Island Railroad layers into and out of Penn Station in the Morristown Line's timetable. As for the route's performance on my end, I think it's fine. It averages around 55 to 60 frames per second for most of the route, but plummets to between 20 and 25 FPS in the Hoboken area, largely due to the increased amount of trains present, I dare say.
Attention, Hoboken passengers. The next train to depart from track 7 will be the New Jersey Transit 11:39 a.m. outbound train to Rutherford, making stops at Secaucus, Ridgewood, Glen Rock, Radburn, Broadway, Plotterville, Garfield, Westmont, and Rutherford. Please stand back from the yellow line, and please watch the gap while boarding the train.
Meanwhile, I noticed that one of the collectibles is a route map showing the entire NJT commuter rail network. There's a bizarre issue with this fence over the underpass at Maplewood, a catenary mast floating off the side of a bridge at Highland Avenue, something wrong with the cutting wall just up the line from Newark Broad Street. You can't access the engine/machine rooms in the ALP-45DP and ALP-46. Dovetail left out the ALP-46A again, for some reason. The escalators at Secaucus Junction are not functional. And the ALP-45DPs on AI services still have their prime movers roaring away when they're supposed to be in electric mode. Your mileage may vary, but perhaps due to the way in which my brain processes things, I find the noise borderline overwhelming at Hoboken when there are several ALP 45 DPs present with their engines running. And that noise reminds me of the horrible throbbing from idling diesel engines on the trains that I saw in York, with the worst offender being the Class 185. There's something else relating to New York City and Train Sim World that I wanted to mention, and I'm doing so here because I don't have enough to say about the topic to justify making a dedicated video. Regarding the upcoming NEC New York to Stamford add-on, I've heard mention of how the Metro North M8 will be in the same situation as the Long Island Railroad M7 and M9, in the sense that the alerter and cab signals will be enabled, albeit with no option to turn them off. I found those systems to be a real test of patience on the LIRR, so I'm not sure if I want to deal with that sort of thing again on the M8. I'm also disappointed in Dovetail's decision to cut the route coverage at Stamford instead of going all the way to New Haven, like they did for the old TS Classic route in 2014. They could have, at the very least, added the branch from Stamford to New Cannon onto the TSW route, but they're not even doing that. To be clear, I have no ill will towards anyone who's excited for the upcoming New York to Stamford route. In closing, I am of the opinion that the Morristown Line is one of the better US routes in Train Sim World where overall quality is concerned. However, I think it is let down somewhat by the absence of the Gladstone branch, the Montclair-Boonton line, the non-electrified section beyond Dover to Hackettstown, and those little route building errors I brought up earlier, not to mention the lack of single-decker locomotive-hauled NJT coaches. On the plus side, the stations are reasonably well detailed, immersion has been improved with the addition of station and on-train announcements, and the Arrow 3 is a well-made unit that I consider fun to drive. In the end, I think the Morristown Line add-on deserves a 7 out of 10, and I would recommend it to TSW6 players who like American commuter routes.